Look, please hit subscribe right now. I have some major breaking news today. I am rushing this last-minute episode together because of some crazy information I finally managed to confirm. One major question is suddenly grabbing everyone's attention in the Nancy Guthrie missing person investigation. Why are detectives suddenly checking out a tunnel that barely got any public notice before? According to recent reports discussed by journalist Brian Entin, a potential tunnel lead just surfaced as police keep searching key areas connected to the case. Law enforcement hasn't publicly confirmed this tunnel ties directly to Nancy vanishing, but the fact they are reportedly focusing on it at all has caused observers to look a whole lot closer. If detectives are burning valuable time checking out a spot ignored during the initial search effort, the big question gets pretty simple. What exactly did they find to make them look again? Today we are walking through every reported detail, what police have actually stated on the record, and why this tunnel clue could be a massive breakthrough in the investigation. Before we keep going, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think police often find the biggest clues in spots they totally missed the first time? Drop a comment below. And if you appreciate calm, evidence-based true crime coverage focused on hard facts and clear timelines, please like this video and hit subscribe. Your support keeps this thoughtful long-form coverage going as the story unfolds. Now, let's rewind to the beginning. For a long time, the public focused purely on the most obvious search zones. Search crews zeroed in on places tied to Nancy's known steps. Detectives pulled digital evidence. They checked timelines. They tracked travel routes. They pushed hard to piece together the critical hours right around when Nancy went missing. The general theory was pretty clear-cut. Police worked outward from known spots. The search grew in stages, with cops focusing heavily on zones matching their current timeline. It made total sense. Detectives usually send resources straight to places backed by hard evidence, witness accounts, or phone data. But suddenly we have this new twist. Based on recent updates from Brian Entin, detectives are reportedly digging into a tunnel-related clue, and that throws a massive wrench into things. Why right now? Why suddenly check a spot that nobody in the public was even talking about earlier in the case? This is where it gets murky. Police haven't actually shared the details driving this new lead. That leaves everyone guessing. People instantly assumed there must be a smoking gun sitting right inside that tunnel. Others think police are just ruling things out. Right now, we cannot call either theory a fact, but cops usually revisit places for a reason. Sometimes fresh evidence flips how a spot looks. Sometimes a witness drops totally new info. Sometimes, detectives realize a spot they ignored absolutely needs a second pass. Seasoned detectives will tell you this happens all the time. So what is the takeaway here? It means a fresh lead does not automatically equal a solved case. It just means police know they still have an unanswered question on their hands. Let's pause and look at why actual physical locations are so crucial in true crime cases. Experts in missing person cases know that physical spots tell stories raw timelines just cannot capture. Phone pings might hint at a location. A security camera might catch someone walking by. But real locations give you context. They show you exact access points, blind spots, and escape routes that never show up on a police report. This is why search teams head back to spots months later. One tiny new clue completely flips how they look at the exact same dirt. And based on all the new reporting, that angle is getting some serious heat right now. Then consider this. Brian Entin has spent weeks reporting live right from the sites tied to the search. He has constantly highlighted spots that locals and police felt needed a second look. Granted, not every single clue pans out into something huge. Far from it. Most tips hit a dead end. But veteran journalists know to watch closely when cops circle back to a location they totally ignored before. And going off the latest updates, that looks exactly like what is happening right here. Here is another big detail. The tunnel itself might not even be the main story yet. The real question is why police suddenly cared about it at all. Because that alone shows us exactly how this missing person case is shifting. Maybe they are blowing up old theories. Maybe they are tracing entirely new escape paths. Or they are finally chasing a tip that just dropped. Look, police still have not confirmed exactly why they went back. But the timing alone has everyone talking. So, what is the bottom line? It proves detectives are tearing down their original theories, instead of just settling for easy answers. In a drawn-out investigation, that detail actually matters. Now, let's look at another angle of this case: public perception. When a search drags on for months, everyone assumes detectives are just staring at the same day one clues. Honestly, that is rarely how real police work happens. Seasoned detectives will tell you cases pivot hard when fresh tips roll in. A spot they totally ignored yesterday, suddenly it is ground zero. An old witness interview suddenly clicks. A suspect timeline gets completely rewritten. And a spot they already swept gets hit again, this time with a totally new theory. That is exactly why this new tunnel lead is turning heads. It strongly hints that police are still piecing together what actually went down. Which brings us right back to the main twist. For months, the entire search focused heavily on obvious spots tied to Nancy's known timeline. Now, detectives are reportedly chasing a clue that almost nobody in the public thought mattered at all. That pivot does not guarantee a breakthrough, but it raises questions. Big questions about what detectives uncovered. Questions about the evidence they are testing. And wondering if crucial clues are still hiding out in spots that patrol cops barely glanced at early on. So what is the takeaway here? It tells us this active investigation is still shifting in some very real ways. More importantly, it is a reminder that cold case units will absolutely circle back to old ground when fresh clues push them that way. As we wrap up part 1, something is getting super clear. This reported tunnel tip matters not because it hands us a neat, instant confession. It matters because it shows cops are likely still digging up fresh mysteries. And in true crime cases, those new questions usually steer detectives straight to their biggest breaks. In part 2, we break down what search experts say about ignored crime scenes, why underground tunnels suddenly matter in major manhunts, and what this fresh lead tells us about where the Nancy Guthrie case is heading next. With police reportedly still digging into this tunnel tip, a much bigger question pops up. What actually forces detectives to double back to a spot they barely even looked at during the frantic first days? Veteran cops will tell you that move is never random. Search operations run on hard evidence, timelines, eyewitness tips, and working theories about what actually went down that night. If a spot suddenly gets swarmed by police again, something major just shifted. It doesn't guarantee they cracked the case wide open, but it proves they think that ground holds hidden secrets. Based on recent reporting from Brian Entin, that looks exactly like what we are seeing here. But now, things get way more messy. Most folks hear the word tunnel and picture some wild movie scene, but law enforcement views these scenes way differently. They don't really care how a spot looks on the surface. They only care about the story it tells. Who can get inside? Does it link 2 grid points? Does it match the suspect timeline? Was it unlocked the night she vanished? And honestly, does it answer the glaring questions detectives are still stuck on? Search and rescue pros say those are the only questions that actually matter. So what is the real takeaway? It means detectives probably care less about the physical tunnel, and more about what it proves regarding suspect movement, hidden access, or pure opportunity. Now, check out this other massive detail. Since day 1 of the Nancy Guthrie case, nailing down a solid timeline has been a total nightmare. Detectives have scrambled to map out Nancy's steps, track where persons of interest went, and back it all up with hard forensics. Building a timeline sounds easy on TV. In the real world, it is brutally hard. Cell tower pings only give you fragments. Security cameras catch a few blind spots. Eyewitnesses add a little context, but task forces will burn months trying to force those messy pieces together. That is exactly why physical geography matters. A real spot either proves a timeline or destroys it. And detectives who work high-profile murders know that blowing up old assumptions is a huge part of the job. Plus, we have this. Internet sleuths keep asking why police ignored the tunnel early on if it was so important. Honestly, that is a fair question. But seasoned cops know crime scenes only turn hot once a new clue drops. Someone finally talks 6 months later. An old text message gets a second look. Drone footage shows a shadow they totally missed. Or a dusty piece of evidence suddenly points the squad right back to a spot they cleared weeks ago. Cold cases mutate, and the crime scenes mutate right alongside them. So what is the bottom line? It proves a random patch of dirt can suddenly become ground zero, just because one fresh detail surfaced. Let's break down how search grids actually operate. Rescue experts confirm that early sweeps always hit the areas backed by the hardest evidence. That strategy is just common sense. Budgets are tight. Search teams have to be deployed smart. Detectives have to hit the spots most likely to cough up solid leads. But as these missing person cases drag on, priorities shift. Places that seemed totally unlikely suddenly matter. Search grids expand. Old assumptions get thrown out. Detectives start digging into wild possibilities they initially brushed off. Experts say this means detectives are actively working the case. They aren't just running in circles and repeating old searches. That's exactly why this reported tunnel lead is turning heads. It signals that law enforcement is chasing fresh leads, not just leaning on past theories. Here's something else to think about. What the public hears and what detectives actually know are two different worlds. We only see a fraction. Cops hold details back. Key evidence stays locked down. Witness statements might never see the light of day. Plus, detectives almost never talk about fresh leads while actively checking them. Because of that, outsiders often wonder why cops suddenly swarm a random new spot. The answer usually lies in secret files kept from the public. Veteran detectives admit this happens way more than anyone realizes. So, what's the bottom line here? It means we probably don't know what actually dragged authorities back to this specific tunnel. And that's exactly where Brian Entin's reporting changes the game. Throughout this true crime saga, Entin has highlighted minor updates that later blow up into massive, critical pieces of the puzzle. Based on his updates, people aren't talking about this tunnel just to talk. They are focused on it because investigators consider it a serious priority. That difference is huge. A clue doesn't have to break the case wide open overnight to matter. Sometimes, its real value is helping cops cross things off. Other times, it rips open totally new questions. And occasionally, it drags the search party towards spots they totally glossed over before. So, what's the takeaway? The tunnel's true impact really depends on whatever secrets detectives pull out of it. Not just the fact that it's there. Let's pull back and look at the whole picture. The Nancy Guthrie mystery is packed with missing pieces, shady timelines, unexplained movements, questions about strange spots tied to the case. Law enforcement says these gaps often force cops to circle back and tear into places they skipped. That's why this underground tunnel lead fits a classic detective pattern. It's just another desperate push to finally connect the dots. Another shot at busting open old theories, and a push to see if massive secrets are buried in the existing file. Wrapping up Part 2, one detail is painfully clear. This reported tunnel search isn't handing us answers on a silver platter yet, but it absolutely proves authorities are chasing fresh clues and ripping up their old assumptions. In cold cases, that's huge. The biggest breaks happen when detectives stop obsessing over where they already searched and start questioning what they might have missed the first time. Up next in Part 3, we'll break down wild theories about this clue, what profiling experts say about ignored locations, and why internet sleuths think this could blow the Nancy Guthrie case wide open. As search teams reportedly kept digging into this dark tunnel, the entire conversation around the Nancy Guthrie mystery suddenly shifted gears. For months, everyone fixated on the usual suspects' known locations, rigid timelines, and evidence we'd all stared at forever. But hardcore true crime followers knew this fresh development was a whole different animal, a sign that cops are finally finding blind spots where old theories completely fall apart. That doesn't mean the original detectives botched it. It also doesn't guarantee this tunnel holds the smoking gun they really need, but it sparks a massive question. What happens when a weird new clue forces police to rethink a timeline they swore they already had figured out? Veteran detectives will tell you, this is when cases get wild. Fresh evidence doesn't always support the old police theory. Sometimes it totally shatters it. Here's where it gets messy. The second this tunnel rumor hit the internet, people started spinning a dozen different theories. Some fans swore it was the ultimate breakthrough. Others thought cops were just checking boxes on a standard follow-up. Honestly, either could be true. Right now, police haven't stepped up to call this tunnel a massive breakthrough. Seasoned investigators warn us to pump the brakes. Tons of hot leads completely fizzle out before delivering real evidence. That's just how detective work goes. Still, experts point out that if cops bothered dragging a team out there at all, they genuinely believed it was worth the sweat. So, what does that mean for us? It means this tunnel's actual impact might stay hidden in the shadows for a while. It completely hinges on what the cops dig up. Now, let's pivot to something else. Why critical spots get completely ignored. Retired cops will tell you straight up the biggest shocks in cold cases happen when teams circle back to spots they already searched, checked, and totally wrote off. Sounds a little crazy, right? But detectives know Physical evidence never changes. What shifts is how police actually understand that evidence. A weird spot that means nothing on Monday might crack the whole case by Friday. A drive that felt impossible suddenly fits a brand new timeline perfectly. A totally random location suddenly makes chilling sense when you drop a fresh clue next to it. Profilers say this exact scenario plays out way more than we think. That's exactly why search teams relentlessly double back over old ground in major crimes. So, what's the takeaway here? It tells us this tunnel lead matters. Why? Because detectives are suddenly looking at it through a totally different lens than before. And there's another crucial detail catching heat: the timing. Based on case reports, this sudden pivot back to the tunnel didn't happen overnight. It follows months of relentless searches, intense interviews, and deep evidence review. And timing is everything here. Detectives don't just wander back to old crime scenes without a rock-solid reason. Something triggered this move. Maybe a fresh witness stepped up, or a deep dive into digital forensics. Could be new intel from recent interviews, or maybe old evidence finally clicked after other pieces of the puzzle snapped into place. Authorities haven't said a word about what triggered this renewed focus. Because of that, the mystery only deepens. But ask any seasoned detective working cold cases. They'll tell you the timing itself drops massive clues. It hints that this lead grew organically out of an active, ongoing probe, not just some random sweep. So, what's the real story here? It means investigators are still actively piecing this mystery together. They aren't just rubber stamping an old theory they already had. Now, consider a massive hurdle detectives face daily: the sharp difference between possibility and real probability. The second a fresh lead drops, everyone jumps to ask, does this blow the whole case wide open? But experts will tell you, cops rarely play it like that. Job number one is figuring out if the tip is actually legit. Does it match the hard evidence? Does it fit the timeline? Can someone else verify it's actually real? Only when those boxes are checked do detectives start looking at the bigger picture. That difference is huge. The internet always races way ahead of the actual police work. True crime fans spot a fresh clue and assume it changes the whole game. Detectives move slow. They test, they verify, they compare, they actively try to break their own theories. Retired cops swear that slow burn is vital to a solid case. So, what's the takeaway? It tells us detectives are treating this tunnel lead as just one puzzle piece in a massive, complicated board. This is where Brian Entin's journalism really shines. From day one of the Nancy Guthrie case, Entin zooms in on updates that show how the detectives are thinking, not just what evidence they bag. And those watching closely say the tunnel lead is huge. Why? Because it literally points to where police are shining their spotlight right now. That kind of intel is gold. A sudden shift in focus usually highlights major, unresolved questions. Police won't spill every secret, but their actions scream about what still matters to them. Right now, reports say the tunnel is at the top of that list, and that alone has sparked heavy debate about exactly where this missing persons case is heading. Now, let's look at a massive contradiction that keeps popping up. The popular theory was that cops had already scoured every major location tied to Nancy vanishing, but new reports flip that. A spot that barely made a blip in the early days is suddenly getting massive attention. That doesn't flat out mean police missed a clue back then. It just proves they're still hunting for the truth, and true crime experts agree, being willing to tear up your own theories is the mark of a rock-solid, thorough investigation, not a broken one. Elite detectives don't fall in love with their own theories. They chase the hard evidence, even if it drags them somewhere totally unexpected. So, what's the real story? It suggests this fresh lead might not just be about a tunnel. It's about a cold case suddenly evolving right before our eyes. As we finish part 3, one fact is incredibly clear. This tunnel lead is about way more than just a fresh spot to search. It's a massive reminder that the Nancy Guthrie case is still hot, incredibly active, and totally unsolved. Detectives are still throwing ideas at the wall, combing through evidence, hitting old crime scenes, and aggressively hunting for answers. Will this tunnel actually crack the case? Nobody knows yet. But seasoned homicide detectives will tell you this: going back to check old, overlooked spots is exactly how these impossible, high-profile mysteries finally get solved. Coming up in our finale, we'll stack up the hardest evidence. We'll break down exactly what this wild new tip actually means. and we'll dig right into where the Nancy Guthrie case is headed next after this massive shockwave. As we pull all these threads together, we have to loop back to the burning question that kicked off this entire tunnel frenzy to begin with. Why did police suddenly decide this random spot demanded a serious second look? When you map out the timeline, the massive searches, and the official police statements, one truth stands out. The physical tunnel isn't the real story here. The massive bombshell is whatever secret intel police just uncovered that dragged them right back to it. And veteran detectives will swear to you that difference is everything. Real cases rarely wrap up with one Hollywood gotcha moment. They inch forward, a slow drip of tiny updates that totally rewrite how we see the evidence. And right now, that looks exactly like what's playing out in front of us. Brian Entin reports that detectives are still digging into clues tied to places that completely flew under the radar when this story first broke. The rumored tunnel lead fits that pattern perfectly. And here is where it gets really compelling. Throughout this whole Nancy Guthrie true crime case, detectives have apparently spent massive hours totally rebuilding timelines, mapping whereabouts, clocking arrival times, checking escape routes, and seeing if their early theories on movement actually match the hard physical evidence. It is a grinding, methodical process. Police have to match up witness statements, scrape digital logs, scan the actual physical crime scenes, and see if the crazy puzzle pieces even fit. Homicide experts say it happens all the time. A totally new spot suddenly pops up as crucial once a tight timeline gets locked in. A place that felt like nothing can instantly turn into everything once fresh details come to light. So, what is the takeaway? It means the whole tunnel lead matters. Not because it launches some wild, brand new conspiracy theory online, but because it might just be the missing link they need to understand the current evidence. Let's look back at the biggest running theme in this missing person case. Detectives are totally willing to throw out their own old assumptions. Veteran cops will tell you the deadliest mistake is falling in love with your first theory. The cold hard evidence rarely goes where you think it should. Real police work means going right back to old spots and hammering the timeline over and over. It looks incredibly frustrating and totally repetitive to us, but experts swear it is required. The job isn't to just rubber stamp what the lead detective already thinks. The mission is finding the actual truth. Sometimes that literally means staring hard at a piece of ground they originally wrote off entirely. That seems to be why this rumor blew up online. It proves the cops are still out there asking the truly tough, ugly questions. So, what does all this mean? It shows this missing person case is mutating quietly behind the scenes, totally out of the public eye. Now, keep this big detail in mind. We honestly do not know everything the cops know. That has been true since day one of the Nancy Guthrie story. Law enforcement holds back, big secrets stay locked up, and heavy police work usually happens totally in the dark. Because of the blackout, us armchair detectives are stuck guessing what is happening with basically half a puzzle. The underground tunnel is a perfect example. Police might have dark, highly classified reasons for checking it out that they haven't shared yet. They could be testing forensic data we have never even seen, or maybe they are just chasing a rumor that needs to be debunked. Right now, we just don't know. Admitting we are in the dark is a huge part of honest true crime reporting. So, what is the lesson here? It means keeping our wild theories tied to the actual, hard facts we have. Let's stop and look at the most rational read on this whole situation based on the news. The smart money does not say the cops have cracked the case. And it doesn't mean the tunnel is the magic key to the entire mystery. The truth is way simpler. Detectives clearly think this dirty underground spot is worth a look. That proves glaring questions are still out there. Questions about walking paths, about hidden access, questions about spots directly linked to the timeline. And experts say those dangling threads usually kickstart the next big phase of a manhunt. That is exactly what we might be watching unfold. A desperate push to test every theory and wipe out the dead ends. So, what does it mean? It proves this tunnel rumor is just a brand new path to walk down, not the grand finale. Let's zoom out and look at the huge picture here. For a lot of months, the Nancy Guthrie mystery has been a mess of missing facts, shifting timelines, and constant scrambling to find the truth. Cops hit the same spots, rechecked evidence, grilled witnesses, and flipped their theories. The spooky tunnel rumor fits that messy search pattern perfectly. It shows a case that is still burning hot and active, not a cold case totally out of leads. Seasoned detectives say that kind of bulldog persistence is absolutely vital. because the real answers rarely just fall into your lap. Sometimes, the truth bleeds out only after cops stare down a place they thought they knew completely. As we wrap this deep dive, a huge question remains. If this wild tunnel story never leaked out, would the police still be asking these exact same questions right now? Or did this leak suddenly expose the secret direction this manhunt is actually heading? Right now, we lack a solid public answer. Law enforcement hasn't claimed a massive breakthrough yet. They haven't officially tied the tunnel to a single piece of hard evidence, and tons of mysteries remain. But the reports say, cops are still out there digging, and honestly, that alone speaks volumes. It means the hunt for justice hasn't died down. They are still putting every theory to the test. And it means those forgotten spots on the edge of town might still hide clues detectives need. What do you think? Is digging through those ignored cold case sites the real key to breaking a long mystery wide open? Or do you bet detectives will finally find their smoking gun buried right inside the existing evidence box? Drop your theories in the comments. And if you want deep, fact-driven true crime storytelling built on hard timelines, real documents, and cold facts instead of wild guesses, hit subscribe and stick around for more updates. Because sometimes, the biggest twist in a manhunt is not finally finding the right answer. It is suddenly unearthing a terrifying new question.